Hello, welcome back. Today we will be starting off with a new chapter, that is chapter 3, life in the rural areas. Okay, so we will be discussing about how the Indian people they lived in the rural areas. Okay, so when the British came to India, when the British first came to India, villages were more of a kind of a self-sufficient in nature. Okay, self-sufficient means they did not have to depend on the others. Okay, they did not have to depend on others for their food as well as for anything. Okay, they were self-sufficient with the foods they produce. They were self-sufficient with the way of life that they were living. Okay, and most of the farmers in India, they owned, they owned the field, the land, and they cultivated from there. Okay, there was no one who was like taking in charge, or who was like the landlord. Nothing was there. Indian people, they had their own land and they cultivated it for themselves. Okay, and no one could come and tell them to move away from the land. Okay, so what happened was, if any kind of calamities like flood, natural disaster, or maybe due to crop failure happens, then what happened is the farmer had to pay, they had to pay a sum amount to the king for their produce. Okay, so what happened was, when any kind of calamities happened, the farmers had to pay only half the amount, or sometimes if they were not able to pay back, they were also removed. Okay, they were not allowed, they were not told to pay if their condition was very bad. Okay, but with the coming of the British, they brought so many systems, they brought so many so many way of collecting money from the people, like tax collection. Slowly by slowly their land was also taken away by the British. Okay, so we will be looking into it one by one. Okay, next is the colonial agrarian policy. Okay, so in our previous chapters we have learned that the Battle of Buxar was fought. Okay, when the Indians they lost the battle in the Battle of Buxar, what happened? The East India Company, they came and they somehow began to administer, or they began to take hold of India under their control. Okay, so when the Indians fell in the Battle of Buxar, they got the rights. The British people, they got the rights to collect revenue in three important areas, that is Bengal, Bihar and Orissa. Okay, so we can see that slowly by slowly they are taxing the people of India. Okay, so the company needed money in order to purchase goods in India. Their main purpose in India was for trade. Okay, they came to India for trade purposes, and they needed money in order to buy those spices and buy those products and then send them off to England. Okay, so the expenditure was very high, and so it was a very affordable thing. Okay, it was a very say not affordable, but it was a very high on demand thing. Okay, so what happened was, the British needed to make money, and in order to do that, their main aim was to extract money from India by collecting revenue from the Indians. Okay, if they collect money from the Indians, what happened? They will become rich, and yes, they did that. Okay, they started taxing on people. They started making factories in order to benefit themselves. Okay, they were fighting a huge amount of wars all around the world, because they were like the countries. Their country was, they wanted to acquire more colonies. Okay, the English, they wanted to acquire more colonies, and so what happened? They were fighting huge number of battle here and there. Okay, and in order to finance that, they needed money. And so what happened? The best way of extracting money was through collecting of taxes from the Indians. Okay, so we could see that. And at a time, when Warren Hastings was the Governor General of India, he gave rights to collect revenue from the people. Okay, but what happened was, when this was introduced, it was not successful. Why? Because the revenues were collected, the people, the tax collectors, they collected more amount of money, and it did not benefit the British people. And so what happened? This did not work out. Okay, and so when this did not work out, they introduced various kind of schemes, okay, or settlements. We will look into it one by one. Okay, next we have the permanent settlement. Okay, so when the collection of revenue did not work out during the time of Warren Hastings, okay, what happened was, again in 1793, a settlement or a program was launched by the British. Okay, so what happened was, this program would ensure them that they would get a regular income, okay, from the hands of the Indians. Okay, they will not have to do anything, they will just have to collect the revenue. Revenue means tax. Okay, so the farmers in India, they had to pay tax to the British. Okay, and this was started off in the area of Bengal and Bihar, okay, where a fixed amount of revenue was to be collected. Say I am a farmer, okay, then what happened is, I am producing crops, okay, and I sold around 5,000. Okay, out of the 5,000, I have to pay around 2,000, that is permanently fixed. Okay, I have to pay 2,000 rupees to the British people. Okay, so that is called as the permanent settlement. The revenue which was to be collected was permanent. Okay, the British would say that you have to pay 2,000, you have to pay 3,000, you have to pay 1,000 according to the land or according to the size. Okay, so this settlement was called as the permanent settlement, and it was introduced during the time of Lord Cornwallis in 1793. Okay, according to the features of the permanent settlement, okay, the revenue, I already told you, was fixed. Okay, the revenue fixed was permanent. Okay, whatever the money was fixed, okay, was to be permanent. It will not go down, it will not rise. Before, you know, when the British did not arrive, if crop failure happened, okay, the farmers had to pay, they can pay less. But here in this instance, okay, whatever has been decided by the British, the Indians are supposed to pay that. Okay, so the main purpose of this settlement was to improve agricultural production for future gain. Okay, but this could not be seen in the scenario of India. Okay, next is, the local zamindar was to collect the revenue from the peasant. Okay, so what happened was, the British would choose one person, okay, to become the zamindar. Zamindar means like he would look after, you know, the peasants, okay, and he would get the revenue from them at the certain point of time. Okay, so I am a peasant or I am a farmer, okay, then I have to pay on the 10th of every month. Okay, on day 10 I have to pay my revenue to a zamindar. Okay, so every time I have to pay. If I fail to pay, what will happen is, the British would take away my land. Okay, and the zamindar also was not just like that. Okay, the zamindar is supposed to collect money from each and every one of them. If the zamindar fails to get the money from the peasants, then he can also lose his title of being a zamindar. Okay, so in order to keep a check on the zamindar also, the British gave them certain pros and cons, okay, that they have to collect by any means. If they fail to collect, okay, less amount of money, then they would be removed from the job of a zamindar. Okay, so this system was very advantageous to the company, okay, because see, every time at a specific date, money would come in. Okay, no matter if the farmer is producing more or less, he has to pay this amount of money, because if he did not pay the amount of money, then he would be removed from his land and he would not have any say. Okay, and this system also created the social class. Okay, so what happened now? There were no social class, only caste system was prevalent in India. So now social class also started to emerge. Landlords began to emerge. Okay, landlords in India began to start because of such kind of revenues which was introduced by the British. Okay, and unfortunately the farmers had to go through so much suffering, because even if their even if their crop failed, okay, they had to pay the same amount of money. Even if they were suffering, they had to pay. They have to take loans from people, and later on losing their land into the hands of the British or the money lenders. Okay, so that was the hardship which was faced by the Indians. Okay, and next we have the Mahahari system. Okay, so in this Mahahari system, it was introduced in the regions of Uttar Pradesh, okay, parts of Madhya Pradesh and Punjab. Okay, so in these three territories, this Mahahari system was introduced, and it was very different from the permanent settlement, because in Mahahari system, okay, what happened was 2 or 3 group of villages, they come together, club together, and revenue was being collected accordingly. But in permanent settlement, a single peasant, okay, whoever it may be, they had to pay the rent or revenue or tax. Okay, but in Mahahari system, what happened? 2 or 3 villages would club together. Example, you take Konama, Visema and Jakama. Okay, so these 3 villages will club together. They will form a mahal. Okay, they will form a mahal, means villages. Okay, so they will club together, and each headman, okay, each headman from the villages, they will collect the amount of money, they will bring it together, and then they will give it to the British. Okay, so that was called as the Mahahari system. Okay, and in this Mahahari system, the tax to be collected was not permanent. Okay, they can change, they can revise the tax accordingly to the situation that they are in. Okay, next we have the, okay, so you can just see group of villages, they come together, and the headman, okay, he will collect the money, okay, or he will collect the revenue from all the villagers. Okay, next we have the Riot system. The Riot system was very simple. Okay, it was started off by Thomas Munro. Okay, by Thomas Munro, you can see the person's picture, okay, here in the slide. Okay, so Thomas Munro was the one who devised the Riot settlement, okay, or system, and it was implemented in areas of Madras and Bombay Presidency. Okay, so under this settlement, okay, what happened was they had to collect revenue. Okay, same like the Mahahari and the permanent settlement. Okay, they had to collect revenue, okay, directly from the peasants. Okay, there was no second person, there was no zamindar, or there was no mahal or village headman, but here the peasant has to do the thing. Okay, so the peasant, as long as he gives and pays the revenue, okay, in time, then he can have his land and he can produce whatever he wants. Okay, but if a peasant does not give the revenue on time, then fortunately or unfortunately, okay, his land will be taken away by the British people. So simple as that. Okay, permanent settlement, a zamindar was supposed to take the revenue from the peasants. Mahahari, the village headman. Okay, 2 or 3 villages will group together. Okay, and the village headman will collect the revenue from all the villages. Next we have the Riot system. In the Riot system, it is directly the British and the peasants. Okay, if the person pays, okay, if the person pays, then he is lucky enough, okay, he can grow whatever he wants. But if a person, okay, does not pay on time, then his land will be directly taken by the British. Okay, further moving to the impoverishment of the peasantry. Okay, means how the peasants suffer in the hands of the British as well as in the system. Okay, so what happened was during the British rule, okay, so the peasants could survive on the little amount they got, okay, from the harvest. Okay, but what happened was, yes, the Indian society was so complicated and so many rituals and ceremonies were performed that farmers were not able to just live like that. Okay, so what happened was when the British came, the age or the practice, okay, new type of practices and systems were brought about, and in order to drain the wealth from India and from the peasants, they started collecting revenue. Okay, so what happened was when the villagers, okay, when the villagers, they had to perform certain ceremonies or marriages, even if they do not have money, okay, they try to make it beautiful, and they try to make the marriages very extravagant. Okay, so that is how the Indian customs and tradition has been. Okay, and so what they do is they will pay the money to the British. Okay, they will let their daughters and son get married. Okay, but what they happened was they started borrowing money from the money lenders in order to have this kind of extravagant ceremonies, as well as pay for the revenue. And for the Indians, okay, any kind of land which is related to their family, okay, they take this as the mother. Okay, they take the land as the mother. Okay, so what happened here is they take the land as the mother, and so they do not feel, okay, they do not feel necessary of selling off their land or giving off their land. Okay, and so what happened here is most of them, they will borrow the money, or if possible they will sell half part of the land to the British, okay, or to any other people, okay, in the village or the state. Okay, and later on, okay, they kept on taking money from the money lenders, paying the revenue. If any crop failure happens, they will take loan from the money lenders. The money lender would charge more rate of interest. Okay, and at last, when the peasants, they are not able to pay that, okay, the money lenders would directly take the land away from the Indian peasant. Okay, so that was how the Indian peasants suffer in the hands of the British as well as the money lenders. Okay, and with the introduction of this new revenue system, okay, for the collection of tax, okay, what happened was they created a new class of people. Okay, that is the zamindars. Okay, they created a new type of class, and these zamindars were Indians. Okay, these people were Indians, but they did not, you know, consider the problems of the peasant. They only wanted profit. Okay, from whatever it may be, they wanted profit, they wanted to get rich, so they did not care about the problems that the peasants were facing. And so, okay, the peasants during the British era, okay, faced a miserable, you know, times, okay, where they could not do anything for themselves and for their family, and because of which, you know, many of the peasants suffered in the country. So in and around the 19th century, okay, so the British, they did not allow, or they did not want the Indians to cultivate any other crops. Okay, they only wanted the Indians to cultivate, you know, crops such as indigo, jute, oil seeds, sugarcane, tea, coffee and cotton, because these were very much beneficial in Europe. Okay, these raw materials were much needed in Europe, and so they wanted the Indians to harvest this kind of crops, besides harvesting rice, wheat, okay, other crops which are edible. Okay, they wanted the Indians to cultivate and harvest crops which would benefit the British company. Okay, likewise indigo. Okay, indigo is a blue color dye. Okay, so you can just see the indigo plant in the slide. Okay, and the person there is making the indigo dye. Okay, you can just see in the picture. So this dye was very much, you know, on demand in Europe. Okay, the European countries, they favor this indigo color more. Okay, and because of the industrial revolution which happened in Europe, okay, it revolutionized the textile industry in England. Okay, so the textile industry started booming. They needed more indigo because indigo was much favorable in the European society. Okay, and the demand kept on increasing, but the British, they could not grow indigo in their region. Okay, because the weather condition in Britain is very different from that of India. So what they did was they imported indigo from countries like West Indies and North America. Okay, so they were importing it from these two regions, and later on they realized that India can also produce indigo, and so slowly by slowly they started forcing the Indian farmers to grow indigo. Okay, and indigo was being grown since the medieval times, and so the British realized that, and they wanted the Indian farmers to grow indigo for them to supply it to Europe. Okay, so what happened was, in places like Bengal, okay, they forced the peasants, or they forced the farmers to grow indigo out there. Okay, but the farmers did not quite like this process of cultivating indigo. So the farmers did not like this growing of indigo, okay, because they were not getting any profit out of it, and they cannot also grow food items in order to surface their family, in order to benefit their family. Okay, rather they were cultivating indigo in order to help the British. Okay, so because of which an Indigo Rebellion or Indigo movement took place in 1959 to 1960 in Bengal. Okay, and it was a very powerful peasant revolt which happened in Bengal. So if you ask, okay, if you just ask, why did the people in Bengal protest against the growing of indigo? Okay, then the problem is here. Okay, so for planting indigo, okay, they need more water. Okay, and they also, okay, what happens here is, if you plant indigo, you need more water, and the soil becomes infertile, and they are not able to cultivate in those type of soil. And also most of the farmers, they wanted to cultivate food crops like rice and wheat. Okay, and this was done forcefully, okay, and in order to benefit the Europeans, okay, in order to benefit the British, okay, and the planters, okay, they used to force the peasant to sign contracts, okay, so that they will work for the British. Okay, so these kind of factors also contributed to the anger against the people, against the peasant in Bengal. Okay, so if they were not able to grow crops nicely, okay, they would go and ask the permission of the British people, but in return, okay, they were slammed back. Okay, so the British planters, okay, used to exploit the peasant. That's very much evident. Okay, so the planters used the immediate intimidate the peasant through kidnapping, illegal confinement, flogging, attacking their women and children, etc. If the peasants complain to the British, okay, so what happens is they will kidnap their family members, or they will torture their children or their wife. Okay, so that was how people were mistreated and they were exploited. And so an angry revolt came out. Okay, it happened in the place of Nadia. Okay, and in 1859 the angry peasant protested and revolted against the British. Okay, this, okay, what happened was the British became the British, they were just very chill about it. But what happened when this incident took place, they were not able to sit quietly. Okay, they had to counterattack, and what happened was they shifted their main focus of indigo cultivation from Bengal to Bihar. Okay, so that was how it happened. But indigo revolt or indigo problems with indigo kept on going. Okay, and even with the Champaran Satyagraha, we have learned how Gandhiji took place in it. Okay, so life in rural India, okay, before the British arrived, it was self-sufficient. But once the British entered, okay, the peasants had to go through a complicated process of surviving, because they had to pay huge amount of money as revenue to the British. Okay, the hard-earned money was supposed to be gone into the hands of the British. Okay, so now we can see that because of this, okay, when India fought for the independence, when nationalism emerged in India. Okay, these peasants were the one who took active part in the freedom movement of India as well. Okay, so with this we come to the end of this chapter.